But all right. Is everybody there? Anybody? Somebody? Anybody? Let's get started. Hello there, Jessica, Dr. Floyd. How are you? Who you got with you?
Oh, this is my daughter.
Hey, hey,
Hey.
Savannah. All right, Jennifer, you with us? I don't see you on screen, but I see a name here. Jennifer, welcome. Hope she's with us tonight. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen and get started because I want to get done in an hour. I don't Having to listen to me for an hour is bad enough. So we'll start with next week. Please remember that next week is presentations. I do expect everybody to have some sort of presentation next week. Doesn't have to be a PowerPoint, just some visual to help us with it as we explore your case next week. It's just now the purpose of this is let me pull up the weekly schedule. Hey Jennifer, how are you? The
Good.
purpose of this activity is to get you practice, and Jessica does this already, and some all of you may do it. How to present something to a faculty in a condensed version that you know. Best faculty meetings are 30 minutes or less. They're like dominoes, and the business session but shouldn't be more than 15. And then you have like new information session where you would do something like that. That's why it says 15 to 20 minutes. A lot of times school administrators after the business session of the faculty meeting, that's when they announce new initiatives or they go over some content or curricular area thing. You've got to get practiced at being able to do it quickly. You got about 15 minutes. If you go past that, you'd be lucky to hold them that long at the end of the school day. And if you made the mistake of going an hour on the business session, you might as well go home. You're not going to get them. So we've got to become particularly practiced at our agendas in terms of running through our business items quickly so we can get to what I call our content items like this, where we're presenting something to our faculty and staff. That's the deal. And so this is what this is. It's just a practice on I've got this information. I've got to summarize it and get it to this faculty over here. How am I going to, what's the best way to do that? Now, although I have a bunch of, I'm not a big PowerPoint fan, especially if you sit and read it to them. I mean, they work as guides, but one of the things, just like with doctoral students with their proposals and their final defenses, I limit mine to 20 and 30, and they have to have big ideas. And I tell them I'm old. If I'm sitting in the back of the room and there's so many words that I can't see I can't read them, then it's not. That's a no. We don't count that. Got to get rid of. It's that kind of thing. You need the big ideas. How are you going to convey the big rocks to your faculty? That's what this is about. And then the next time that we get together would be the Saturday week. We'll be in Charlotte, and then you will present your Maxwell laws, and I'll do mine as well. And again, you notice it's a 15-minute presentation, trying to get you in that habit of here's some information I want to share with you. And it might be, it might be as long as War and Peace, the book. It might be, need a small boy to help you carry it around. But you got to learn how to be, you got to summarize, you got to summarize, the entire Bible in 15 minutes. Whatever it is, I don't care. You got to get in the habit of learning to do that. No matter how complex it is, no matter how lengthy it is, you've got to get in the habit of doing a 15-minute presentation. Right? They just won't stay with you longer than that. You're wasting your time. All right. Anybody have any questions? And I'm talking to the folks on screen again. And Jennifer, we're going to let you introduce yourself in just one second, but to the folks who aren't with us tonight as well. Jennifer, who are you and why are you here?
Hi. So I am here because my principal asked me. I'm kind of in the same situation as Jessica. We actually were in the same cohort. Hey.
Great.
And yep. And so when I was watching some of the videos that y'all from classes before, when I finally got in Blackboard in week 4, I was like, oh, I got to catch up on all of this stuff. And so same deal. My principal is moving me in out of the classroom and into an administrative role. And so I'm starting some things this year to hopefully fold into a role in January, maybe. So just came in perfect timing.
Great. Great. We want you to get paid. We want you to get your license and get paid. That'd be great.
Thank you. I do too.
Yeah. If you're just a dean or a whatever, they don't pay you till you become an AP. So hopefully, this will help. That'll defray the cost of this ridiculously expensive program. But we're glad to have you. All right. So tonight is we were all on last week. We talked about cases. Tonight it's on me to talk about human resources. And so, I always tell you, I never had an original idea in my life. I always was trying to borrow from other people. And so one of the ladies that works with me during in the regular MSA program is Dr. Renita Griffin Jordan. Renita is principal at City of Medicine in Durham. And she put together this little 20 power, again, I don't like them more than 20. She put this together as a mini lesson she did in our class this summer. And boy, it's really good. But it talks about what you have to do to manage human resources as a school principal. And so those 4 functions are recruit, hire, evaluate, and support. And you say, Dale, recruit, what are you talking about? Well, we're in a competitive environment now. Please remember that. We have to compete with charters, privates. We have to compete with other public schools in order to get teachers. Now you say, well, Dale, everybody pays the same. Well, no, that we don't. some schools pay less than we do in public schools, but it's working conditions. It's there's a lot of things that go into that recruitment piece. But the first one I want to start with tonight is the hire piece. Now I'm going to go through this real quickly because we're going to talk about this more specifically in the second half in terms of the legal part of it. That's going to be one of your activities in the 603 part, is to go to your HR department and find out what is the hiring process in your district. Now you say, but Dale, there's 11 functions. Don't make me take my shoes off. Imagine I've got two hands. Anyway, 11, there's 11 due process functions to hire somebody in a public school. They're the same everywhere. So why would we go ask our HR people what it works like in our district? Well, here's the deal. The 11 functions that you have to go through to hire somebody are the same due process wise every public school in the state and in South Carolina, because it's federal. Except who does it? That's the question. And so I'll give you the example. When I was a principal in 2 rural Western North Carolina districts, I had to do everything. When I mean I had to do everything, I had to advertise, I had to interview, I had to check the references, I had to send them for, background check, drug test, all that. Now, back in the day, we didn't really have as much as we do now. Basically, we just had them blow in a sack, I think, for a breathalyzer or something. But it was up to me to do everything. Everything. I became principal in Charlotte-Mecklenburg, the wealthiest district in the state. I didn't have to do anything but interview. I had an HR analyst that did everything. Everything. That's the dichotomy, folks. That's the difference. And your district is along the way. And what you've got to find out as a school administrator is what is your function? What is your role? Because if you miss one of those steps, you lose your house. It's just that simple. You violate federal EEOC law, you lose your house. Again, you don't run afoul of the feds. You don't misspend their money but once, and you don't violate hiring laws but one time. And so what you've got to understand is there's a legal process, and all the check boxes have to be checked. The issue from district to district is who checks those boxes, who does the references, who does the calls, who does the interviews, who does the background checks, who gets the transcripts, who does the drug test, who does the background check, who orders that, who does the advertisement period, who writes the job announcement, who does all that stuff. Who says that we can get this person paid? Who does the pay? The pay authorization for for it, and how much? All that is based on each individual district, and you have to follow that legal process. So the first thing you want to do is, we'll talk about hiring. And if I can get it, you contact your HR to start the process, and then at some point you review your candidates, and you don't know how many you're going to get. You're looking for highly qualified. You have to do a minimum of 3. If you don't have anybody, or if they're not highly qualified now. I am not a Collins fan. Collins, Good to Great. You've all heard of that book. It was the hottest thing in the world 25 years ago. One of the things that people still use it, and one of the things that he always talked about was get the best people and get them on the bus and get them in the right seat. What if there aren't any best people? What are you going to do now, hero? His whole program falls down. And even now in the post-COVID era, what are you going to do if there isn't anybody, much less the best people? And one of the things that he advocated is nobody's better than a bad body. If they're not the greatest candidates out there, don't hire anybody. Well, who's going to supervise these kids? What are you going to do? And so you're looking for the best ones that you can find. Right now, you're just hoping you can find any. So, my point of that is you've got to temper your expectations right now. One of the things that you don't want to do is start trying to do curriculum interviews during the hiring process, and get down in the weeds where you're asking these kinds of things. I mean, you're looking for numbers right now, folks. If you got three good candidates, then in a second round you might can talk curriculum. But you've got to temper your expectations and what you do versus the workforce that's out there today. Now, once you have gone through and gotten somebody, anybody, a good body, a bad body, then you have to understand you don't hire anybody. You recommend, and the superintendent doesn't hire anybody either. The board hires. Superintendent can only recommend. You recommend to the superintendent, he or she recommends to the board, and they make the job off. And that's the way that works. I have another PowerPoint here that we definitely won't go through. This one right here about hiring, and it speaks to that. Elected by the local board of education upon the recommendation of the superintendent. So I've got all the legal stuff on this one right here. We'll go into it more. Be thorough. A sub is better than a bad hire. I don't, if you can get a sub, I don't know. That's what I'm talking about. This is some of that old thinking that we might have to go back and readjust this now. I've had to do that. I'd prefer to get me some people. I know it's not good to get good ones, but you can get rid of them if they aren't any good. We're going to go through that cycle in just a few minutes. I mean, if they can't teach, you can get rid of them, but you got to get some people. I mean, I walked into a junior high in Charlotte with 37 vacancies. I was out flagging down cars on Central Avenue. Can you teach school? I asked a man in an interview, do you wear a chicken suit? I absolutely asked a man in an interview, do you wear a chicken suit? And when he said no, I said, I'm going to recommend you for hire. That's absolutely a true story. I was principal of junior high right out next to the old Charlotte Coliseum, what they call Bojangles or Coliseum now, Bojangles Arena on Independence. And our booster club, athletic booster club and PTA worked the concession stand at the Charlotte Checkers hockey, minor league hockey games. And we were there every week, 2 or 3 times a week. And there was this bunch of men that would come to the games. And in intermission, they would dress in chicken soup, get drunk, and go out on the ice and flop around. And he said, I'm a big Charlotte Checkers fan. I come to all the game. And I said, you're not one of them idiots that wear the chicken suit, are you? And I said, I'll never be able to hire you. If the parents know that they'll fire me. He said, no, I'm not one of them. But I said, well, okay, then I'll hire you. I mean, sometimes you have to temper your expectations. When you have 37 vacancies, as long as you don't wear a chicken suit, he's breathing, appears to be sober, fairly clean clothes, you the man. I mean, and so you've got to understand the conditions you're in. If you're at an A school, A grade school, and everybody wants to be there in the better part of town, you can walk and look more than somebody who's an F school and out in the middle of nowhere. All these things factor into the hiring process, but bottom line is you got to know what your functions are in due process, and you've got to know that you don't offer anybody a job. Somebody else does that. If you remember those things, you'll be fine. And again, right here it says, the superintendent hires, and then you got to evaluate teachers. Now, let me move that one out of the way, and I can close that one now. Let me get this out of the way. Here's the teacher evaluation manual. You know that according to the years of experience, you have a certain number of evaluations that you have to do on teachers. Beginning teachers get more formals and more walkthroughs. Experienced teachers get fewer, but you still have to do formal observations, pre and post conference, all those things. And so here's the manual. That system is called the NESIS system. And here are the elements and the standards and the elements that you're looking for. Here's a really neat cheat sheet that summarizes that whole manual. It has the standards and what you're looking for and the conversations that you need to initiate as a school principal. But the main thing here to remember is you have a formal evaluation system in North and South Carolina. You have certain metrics that you have to meet in terms of the number of formal, informal, and walkthroughs that you have to do with teachers based on their years of experience and their certification categories. Jessica, you're new AP this year, is that right? Are you able to do evaluations yet?
Yes, we are actually TSI, so we're fixing to have to do super observations.
Yeah, yeah. And so, and the reason I ask that is this: one of the things that I preach, especially to my first-time master students, is, and we actually put it into the program for the first-time masters group that we just did in Gaston, is a lot of districts make you get NESIS training for their district, and you have to be certified to do observations. That's a good thing to do. Um, And so we actually built it into a group of 14 that we had from Gaston that were on a scholarship program. And we did a double class on Thursday night where they did curriculum for an hour, and we did NESIS training. They all came out where they could walk into their building and go in and do teacher observations to help. Um, if you are newly hired, that's your number one. That's, if you ask me, Bill, what would be the number one thing that would make me successful? Go get certified to do observations. Don't be hanging around. And oh, I'll get to that later on. And then you can't get into the rotation because the number of observations does not change just because you got an AP, a new AP that's not certified to do them yet. That part is fixed. And so you got to be able to go to the room and start right away. Otherwise, somebody else has got to pull your load until you can get certified. And that's a way to make people angry and lose friends quickly. Is that if you can't hit the ground running doing those teacher observations. And so again, the system is called NESIS training. Some districts do their own. Some use kind of a group approach, but everybody's got to be trained and certified to do these because these have implications for people's employment. You can't go and go to dismiss somebody and say, well, who evaluated this person? Well, Dale did, but what's his background? Well, he went down the room. He seemed to know what he was doing. Well, was he certified to do this? Well, no. Well, then those observations won't stand up in court, folks. Again, due process. We have due process on hiring people. We have due process on evaluating, and then we have due process and dismissal. You got to be clean all the way through. So you need to be certified to do those observations. Now, walkthroughs up to 15 minutes, that's how you really get a handle as a principal on what's going on in your building. You can't sit and do observations all day. I see Beth and Jesse are with us. Great. Everybody has a hide, HIDE. Everybody has a hide, not your skin, but all administrators have a place that's their comfort zone where they go and hide. You folks, it's the classroom. You EDCI folks, I told you, operations people like me, it's the ball field, the lunchroom, auditorium, places like that, anywhere but the classroom, office. But one of the things that we can't do, even is the instructional wizards that you folks are, we can't go to the classroom and hide all day. We'd love to, but we just can't do that. We can't just sit and do observations all day. You got parents coming in, you got teachers, you got to lead the school. You got to operationalize the school. So you can't do that. And so everybody's got to pitch in. You've got to do yours, but everybody's got to pitch in. You got to divide them up. You can't just do them all. And you need inter-rater reliability as well. You need more than just one person doing it. So you've got to develop that matrix. You got to have it from the first day of school. Jessica, were you a part of developing the matrix on what teachers needed, how many, and when? Or was that already done when you got there?
No, I helped do it.
Mm-hmm. You sat down as an administrative team with your calendars and you look at every staff you got. How many do they need? When do they need them? You can't wait till the last month of school and do all three. Doesn't work that way. They have to be spaced out. So you have to sit down and build your matrix of when observations are going to be done, the formals, the informals, the walkthroughs. Walkthroughs are more for you to know what's going on throughout the building to get a larger sense of that. But you got to do your evaluations. If you don't, you will not survive. If you don't know what's going on in the building. All right, so let me share my screen. All right. And so I can move that out of the way, go back to this. Hiring, evaluate. Again, there's your NESIS manual right there, education and values system. Here is The annual evaluation process that I just talked about. Again, it's due process. You start with one training. Before participating in evaluation, all teachers, principals must complete the training. Again, it's required that you be certified to do observation, and then you go through this entire system. And so there it is. Which staff members do they evaluate? Again, your teachers, and again, you have to do them. Your specialists, media, IT facilitators, psychologists, social workers, counselor, and speech language people. Now, some districts don't have you do your exceptional children, but most of them do. So I would say your federal programs are on here too. Your federal programs, CTE, Title I, exceptional children, 504, gifted, and which one did I miss? Oh, English as a second language. Most districts have you do that. Some larger districts like Charlotte-Mecklenburg, you don't have to. They have their own program specialists that come in and evaluate the federal people. But most smaller districts, you have to evaluate all of them. Jessica, in Robinson, do you have to do your federal people as well?
Yes.
Yeah, you don't have enough specialists to do that. Yeah. Now, the beauty of working in CMS was I didn't have to hire cafeteria or supervise them. I didn't have to do custodians. I didn't have to do bus drivers. I didn't have to evaluate any federal people. We had program specialists who came in and did that. We only had to evaluate classroom teachers. But now, understanding there was nearly 300 of them. There was a bunch. We had 3,200 students, so we had a bunch. But yeah, but you think about how many we'd had to do. We had to do all that other stuff. But yeah, we had a lot of help there. But I had 6 APs and 2 others that could do observations. So there was 9 of us. So it wasn't that bad. And so, what I mean, but when you're in small districts, I told you I used to wear a hairnet and serve lunch if the cafeteria lady was out. That's before I just had hair on my face. Drove the bus, got the vomit up. Elementary school, you get vomit up every day. That's the best part of the job. And so, again, you got to know it puts an inordinate burden on you to do hiring in terms of if you were in a small district where nobody does any of this stuff but you, it puts an inordinate burden on you. If you're in a small district where you don't have very many APs, getting all these observations done puts a terrible burden on you. But all these things are federal. There's law behind them, and so you have to follow through on all your hiring process. You have to follow through on all your evaluation process. And then, unfortunately, you have to follow through on make sure that you're hitting all these metrics in case you've got the action plan and dismiss somebody. If you haven't done all this correctly, if you haven't done all their observations or formals, you haven't done the pre and post conference, you haven't done the recommendations, if you haven't actually put them on an action plan, then they'll be yours forever. You got to do all these things. And so that's the next piece that you have to do. Now, we're going to get into this. And this one is a little, again, standard 6. All right. Boy, this is a tough one. So it'll take a minute to tell you about this. So I'm going to stop my share. All right. Standard 6 is EVOS. Now in South Carolina, it's some districts have EVOS. Some are still doing student learning outcomes, SLOs. Doesn't matter. It's all the same thing. It's about growth. Does a kid grow a whole year? And that's calculated into a teacher's evaluation. Now it's factored into a school's performance grade as well. Does a kid make a year's growth? And you say, well, so one of the hardest things as a principal that you have to do is understand this and then get teachers to understand that it's just as easy to make growth with any kid, because all of the variables are controlled for. So if Siobhan and I are two students sitting in somebody's middle school, we won't have the same growth score that we have to make to show a year's growth. Now, here's one of the problems that we get into with this as well. So let me share my screen, and I'm going to pull up a school report card, and we're going to look big picture here for a minute, and then we'll get into the micro part of it. So here's the report card for Masonboro Elementary in New Hanover County. Let me move some of this stuff out of the way. All right. Everybody knows how to pull up the state report card, right? Just Google NC report card and you go to the county. Okay, Masonboro's in New Hanover down in Wilmington. And one of the ladies that works with us that actually teaches this course 601, this is her school. So when you open up the state report card, here is her score. Her performance grade is 88. She's an A school. And you got growth right there. She's met, but she usually exceeds. You can see she's exceeded over the last 8 years. She's exceeded more than she's met. And so, obviously this is a very good school. Now, and then you see the performance. And then right underneath that, you see the proficiency score. 93 and 82, and here's it graphed out. This is, the number of kids that are proficient. What's that, 70% or better proficiency. And so, but here's their composite score right here. They're an 88A. Their performance grade. The performance grade of the school is the combination of the, kids at proficient level and meeting growth or not. Here's the problem, though. It's 80-20. 80% of it is proficiency. Only 20% is growth. Proficiency is who you got. Growth's what you do with it. So if you're at a school like Masonboro there at Wrightsville Beach and Masonboro Island Figure 8, there ain't no poor folks there. The scores come walking in the front door every day. Now, they do a good job. They get growth out of them. But, the system is still set up to be a punitive system, a comparative system, where performance counts 4 times as much as growth. But when we do teacher observations, we want to pretend like that growth counts as much as their evaluation. And teachers complain about that. If you're leading a school for growth versus, and that's what you have to do now. The MTSS system, you have to lead schools for growth of every kid. However, you'd be a whole lot better off if you just concentrated on proficiency. Take the kids that are close to proficiency level, put all your resources behind them, would be a whole lot better than working with everybody just trying to get them to grow. I mean, you could grow a kid from 30 to 40 in terms of proficiency level. He made his growth, might have exceeded his growth, but he's still at 40. If you're below 50, what happens? You're low performing. So this whole evaluation system is kind of out of kilter. But we are now leading schools for growth. We want every kid to grow. We're doing intervention. We're doing MTSS for every kid. And what we have to convince is that teachers, that every kid, because we're controlling all their variables, every kid can make his growth score. And if we get every kid growing, we can eventually make proficiency if we get every kid growing. But, as long as we don't get fired for being low performing before we get them. But teachers want to put the resources behind the few kids in their class and spend the time with them, the ones that they can get to a proficiency level, rather than every kid who may be 20 points or 30 off proficiency. That's the conflict in public schools right now, is we have to lead for growth, but we're being 80% of the evaluation of schools and teachers is based on proficiency level. See the imbalance there? And we don't lead the same way. But your job is to explain EVOS to teachers, which is value added, controls for everything except them, and we can see how much value that teacher adds. And that's what you've got to focus on, is not the calculation on performance. We're trying to figure out how much value you add, and we're going to help you add more value to your students. And so let me dig into the EVOS program for you a little bit here. So for 20 years, from 1992 to 2012, we collected test score data in North Carolina for 20 years. We dumped it into a big database and we ran an analysis of variance. And we probably had 150 different variables that we threw into that analysis of variance. We use the SWAG method. For those, y'all are all docs or postdocs or docs. You know what the SWAG method is when you're doing analysis of variance. If you think back to 736 when you had the quantitative part, you run an analysis of variance, you got this score over here, this dependent variable that's dependent upon all these independent variables that influence that test score. And so we ran an analysis of variance using the SWAG method. We just, we thought of everything we could think of that might affect the kid's score. We put about 150 in there. We came out with 10. Again, you just swagged it. You know what a swag is? A stupid wild ass guess. We just came up with about 150 of those. And we pared it down. The analysis of variance tells us which ones actually matter. And there's only 10 things that matter on kids' test score. And we use this to create a regression equation, and then an algorithm. And I'll show you how that works. Because teachers always say, how'd they come up with that score for that kid? That score's too high, or how'd they come up with that? It's too hard to make. Well, I'll show you how we do that. So, let me share my screen. So what I just told you, you can do it. Here we go. So for 20 years, we collected these things and we tried to figure out what are the independent variables that influence the dependent variable, which is the test score. And so they ran it. And so what they found, there were 10 things that affect the kid's test score. Here they are on the screen, and they might vary a half point every year. They keep on running the same analysis of variance every year. So here are the 10 independent variables that influence the outcome of a kid's standardized test score. Race counts 30%. Mother's education, father's income. Teacher should be 10. School district 5, school 5, grade 5, age 5, gender 5, previous test scores 5. Those are things that matter. Those and only those. And so we control for everything except for the teacher. We put the teacher in the equation as 10. So if the teacher adds the value that they're supposed to, the kid will make their grade. So, okay, Dale, how's this work? All right, so we'll take an individual kid. This is a real kid. Jamar's a third grade student in Charlotte Mecklenburg. His independent variables are, all right, he's black, so he gets 20 out of 30 on his on his algorithm. If he were white, he'd get 30 out of 30. If he were Hispanic, he'd get 15 out of 30. His mother has less than a high school diploma. She's got an 8th grade education, so he gets 5 out of 15. If she had beyond a 4-year degree, she would get 15. No father in home, so that's 0 out of 15 possible points. Father income in excess of 150 would be 15 points. All right, so now you say, well, how does this matter? Well, if dad makes enough money, mom can stay at home. Who does lap time with young emerging readers? That would be mama. So that's why that's important. We always calculate the teacher as 10. High wealth district, you get 5. Low wealth district would be 2. Billingsville was a takeover school, 0. If it was a high growth school like we just saw in Masonboro, that'd be 5. Grade 5, he's not middle repeater, so he gets 5. Now he was developmentally delayed, so he's not age appropriate for his grade, so he gets 3 out of 5 points on that one. Since this is a math test, he gets 5 points. Female would get 4. Be the opposite if it were a reading test. So his equation goes like this. We add all these points together and we come up with Jamar's got to get 55, only got to get 55% of the number of questions on that math test, which is 180, multiplied by 0.55. He's got to get 99 right to show a year's grade. That's the way EVOS works. So the only thing that can go wrong is if the teacher doesn't add their value. So the whole notion of EVOS has always been intended to find out how much value teachers were adding so that we could put them through professional growth and grow them into the people we needed them to be for kids. But now we've snuck it into evaluation. We've stuck it into their evaluation. We've snuck it into school evaluation. Now, I'd like to see evaluation done on growth only. But again, proficiency is about who you get, not what you do with them. My wife taught 15 years at IB school on the campus of Davidson College, northern Mecklenburg County. Throw a rock over the line, right across the road from the house, right across the water. And I would tell her regularly, and she really loved this, by the way. The most important person in their organization was the custodian. As long as he got the front door open every day, the scores just walked right in. I mean, they had the best and brightest kids in the district. Proficiency is not a deal for them, but are you making growth with those kids? And just like what Jessica was talking about, the kids that they have walk into their building are nowhere near proficiency. But we should only be involved in growth. We've set our schools up that way where we're putting all of our resources in every kid, no child left behind. We're doing MTSS intervention for every kid, but then we're being punitive when it comes to grading time for schools. We're using proficiency 4-to-1 over growth. Doesn't make sense, but that's it. But the bigger issue here is in a teacher evaluative model, you've got good data on that teacher whether they're growing their kids or not, and that's what you want. That's all you can ask teachers to do is to grow their kids. And so here's my MTSS for teachers. This is my professional growth plan. If you were in the second level course, you'd be doing this. But again, best practices, Marzano, you vary those, whole group, PLC, which is small group, and one-on-one. The Linda Darling Hammond model of staff development. If I can get my screen to share here. Right here it is. This is mine. I call it MTSS for teachers. You start out first work day, we do a whole group on Robert Marzano and high yield strategies. It can vary from 30 minutes to all day according to the level of adoption that your faculty has. But we start out every year with this is the coin of the realm, folks. We teach best practices in order to get test scores. And when you have those, and I'll tell you the same thing I told the group 3 weeks ago, the new babies that came into the MSA program. If you're one of those people who think that standardized test scores don't matter and that they don't reflect what a kid knows, get out now. This is not the business for you. You have one job as a school principal, one, to either make a good number go up or a bad number go down. That's it. It's a performance-based business. And so why would we not use best high-yield strategies when we teach school? Marzano's 9. There's some, more modern stuff out there, but it all circles back to these things. We work on individual of these strategies in PLCs, and we start with beginning teachers from day one. But second quarter, we start with low performing teachers that aren't doing well, that had bad scores last year on their growth and their kids. We start with them right away. We've already done an observation on them. We see they're not doing very well, and we stay on our timeline and we continue to work so that those that aren't getting that aren't improving, we've got them on an action plan by the beginning of the second semester at the end of January. And by the end of the third semester, they're not making any, we can non-renew them. You can get rid of people who can't teach. Now, I know you're going to say, Dale, this is the stupidest thing you've said. You say a lot of stupid stuff. You can't lead a school until you can let a good person go that can't teach. Remember what they do at Jones Sausage? They make sausage. What do we do in school? We teach kids. You can't just have good people around, but that can't teach. I mean, that's kind of idiotic. So, boy, I don't want, they can't pay their bills or they got a family. If you've worked with them, if you've done whole group, you've done PLC work, and you've done one-on-one coaching with them for a half a year and they've not improved, you got to let them go. Say, well, Dale, I can't get anybody. Well, it might be time for that sub, but you can't just keep people that can't teach school. It'll kill you as a principal. You will not make it. You got to have people. If they're willing to try to improve, and they can't teach, that's okay. You can keep them. But I'm talking about people who just are sorry and won't try to get any better. You can't keep them. I'm sorry, you can't, because they won't keep you. Unfortunately, one of the doctoral students that I inherited in one of the programs, her school is low performing this year. And that's hell. What the district and what the state puts you through, it's hell. You would do most anything to avoid that. I noticed Jessica. I'm not going to call on you to speak, but if you want to, the floor is yours. But it's hell. You would do most anything to avoid that. You got to have people that can teach school. That's just all there is to it. You just got to have people that can teach school, and if they can't, it's your job to get them to be able to teach school. That's the evaluation part. And again, I freely admit that the performance grade is out of balance. It should be all growth, for a school, and we shouldn't be evaluating 80% of on proficiency for a school. But this was designed to help teachers get better. But unfortunately, we just can't turn loose of that. We need to be able to go to the country club and brag that our school beat your school. That has no place in this business, but that's what it's all about. That's what, again, it's about who you get, not what you did with them. But you've got to convince teachers that if we can get every kid growing every day, that we can eventually make proficiency. That's your job. But you've got to be able to explain EBOS to them so that they understand that there's not any one group of kids or in the building that are easier to get growth than others or harder to get growth than others, because it's not groups, it's individual kids. And all the variables are controlled for except for the teacher. That's what we are able to measure with EBOS, is the teacher's value added. I'll pause and catch my breath. Anybody have questions on EBOS? I'm sure you folks already knew all this stuff about EBOS. I'm sure that somewhere along the line y'all figured that out, or somebody taught it to you. I hope they did. If they didn't, you learned something new tonight. Who would have thunk it? And so that's that piece. Now, so we'll move on from evaluation to our next function here in our PowerPoint. I can get that one out of the way as well. So that's what Standard 6 is about. And then we have, again, the cycles, and it tells you how many new teachers. The comprehensive is required for new teachers, pre-observations, post, how many peers they have to have, formals. All these things are laid out for you. Again, this is due process. You've got to hit these metrics in order to do this. And then you've got to support teachers. This is a teacher's market, but do not settle. Amazing subs better than a horrible teacher, quicker to replace. Again, don't take a horrible one. Again, you may have to have a sub. It's not the best, but that's it. But treat your subs like family. Do the swag. Treat your faculty like family. Treat your subs even better. When you pass out T-shirts, to the faculty, or shirts or whatever, I was the swag king. Jackets, polo shirts, denim shirts. How old am I? Remember back in the 90s when denim shirts were all the rage? We had denim shirts with the logos on them, and knit shirts, and warm-up suits, and we did Price's chicken coop on Fridays and brought in fried chicken. They had to bring a whole truckload. Had so many people. I don't remember how I found the money to do all that stuff, but I did. And we had a big time. I mean, and we had Mr. Palmer. Roger Palmer was our full-time sub. He came every day. We had 4 or 5 of them came every day, because that meant teachers, somebody's going to be out. But you treat those subs like gold. I never will forget Mr. Palmer. His claim to fame was that he taught Snoop Dogg in junior high in Long Beach, California. That was his claim to fame, because Snoop was big back then. He was, West Coast. I'm a Tupac fan, Tupac fan myself, but that was Mr. Palmer's claim to fame. But they were just like anybody else on the faculty. You got to have those subs, and you got to treat your faculty well. and that's that support notion. You've got to work with them. You got to grow them. You got to support them. You got to do all those things. And I'll tell you, that's the key to recruitment is if people want to work for you and the word gets out and other people will want to come. So all those pieces are very important. And so make sure that you understand that. You got employee assistance. You can do, the EAP program. That's one of the things that I'm going to have you do next semester is find out what employee assistance you have for your school, your school district. That's offered through the Human Resources Department because you want to support your staff if they've got issues. Teacher appreciation, don't micromanage, practice what you preach. If you want them to be on duty, show up for yours. All the things that you need to do. This is how you support and retain staff. And if you do that, it leads right into recruitment. People will want to come and work with you. Promote your school, do the swag, job fairs, all those kinds of things. Again, you can get transfers if you're a good person to work for and you treat your people well and you help them grow and meet their needs. What's that Maslow's hierarchy of needs? You help them self-actualize and meet their needs. They'll want to come, and more people will want to come. And so recruit. When a teacher leaves your school, have some people in the process. Transfers. One of the things that I, didn't have to do in Charlotte Mecklenburg, but I would suggest you do. And if your district says don't do it anyway. Is accept resumes from people. Now, don't. And I'm not saying that you should interview them without them having been in the applicant flow. What I'm saying is a lot of times people will come by or want to send you, save those things and send them on to HR or keep them and then send them to HR and see if you can get those people vetted. That happens all the time, especially with kids in college, student teachers. Make sure that, when you see them, get a resume. And now, again, don't be calling them up and interviewing them. Don't be gangster in this thing now. Put them through HR. But now, one of the things in Charlotte Mecklenburg, they wouldn't even let us take them because we weren't in that process. They had people that did that. But I took them anyway. And I would send them over there to my analyst and said, this person looks good. But that's one of those things you got to work it. You got to work at that. And make sure that when you see those things that you get those resumes, get them in the applicant flow. And I've had principals say, well, they might go to work somebody else, better school. Well, then good for them. We help the district out. But make sure that you follow up with those things. So make sure you follow up with them. So that's her PowerPoint. It's a really simple one, but it kind of outlines the whole personnel notion of what you need to do with schools. Again, you got to convince your teachers to grow kids. When we set up our system for growth. It's all about, MTSS is all about individual kids reteaching. It's about growth. I fully understand when teachers say, well, 80% of it's about who you get. Well, it is, but we can't affect that. We want to grow every kid. Let's get after it. And that's what EVOS is about. And right here, kind of a final point on the politics part of it is, as much as we like it or not, politics are crucial. It means we must be ever vigilant and advocate for public schools, much as at state. It means we got to go out and try to find good people. We got to teach kids. If we don't succeed politically in terms of kids growing, kids being successful, kids learning, we're going to be out of business. And so that's the notion with that one. Again, I've gone over the growth model for you. Here's what we're looking for when we go in the classroom to evaluate teachers. Here's the manual. Make sure. And then again, here's the EVOS lesson plan, which has my MTSS for teachers. I don't have this. I will put it. I actually have it in the second half, but I'll go ahead and put it under tonight's as well. And so I'm going to leave this on the screen, and this is where I want to I actually finished up in time for us to talk a little bit tonight. What are your thoughts on the EVOS model? Please understand that it's just data. It's not about, it's not racist or discriminatory or any of that. It's using historical data. What do these folks historically, what do they score based on their demographic or independent variables? What is your thought on how we use EVOS to isolate teachers? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? It's accurate, but I'm more interested in the voice from the field on EVOS. What do you think about this?
I'll talk.
Yes, Beth.
I think that if it's used the way it's meant to be, it can be great. I know
teacher improvement.
Right. And I know at one school we had our, data guru. She came in and she talked to the teachers about what their data and EVOS showed, what group was their strength, what group was their weakness, things like that. And we had teachers walking out of there in tears, like we were saying they weren't any good. So they really didn't understand the point of us going over that data as being a growth piece for them.
Yeah. You got holes in your game. You can't cross over. You can't dribble with your left hand. We're going to help you with that.
Right. But they didn't get that. And that was
basketball
that ended up being a problem.
Yeah. And so one of the things that we do, I'm glad you brought that up. Let me show you this right quick. So what you do is this. And again, you're not trying to be mean. Let me go quickly here. Again, from Dr. Hamilton's school, if you're within, 2 above your meets, if you're more than 2 standard errors of the mean above, you exceed, same way on below. But here's what Beth's talking about. This is what you have to have these critical conversations with teachers about right here. All right, let's look at teacher A, a 3-year pattern for teacher A. Now they just finished the 2021-22 pattern, so we'll have the new one on this teacher. But they divide the kids up into quintiles. That would be 5. Which is low, medium, low, medium, high, basically 5 quintiles. And so that we, the more of those you get, then the better the data, the finer the data is, the more data points you got. So look at teacher A. So when we talk about quintile 1, that's the lowest kids. That's the booger eaters. That's the ones you have to watch the crayons and the pace. And then of course your 5 is is your high flyers. That's your bluebirds. And so you look at that. Teacher A has a a very noticeable hole in her game. What's the hole in her game?
She doesn't meet the middle of the road kids.
That's exactly right. So I talked to Robin, who actually has this teacher, and I said, explain that one to me. How can you get all that growth? She does an excellent job with those low kids. She does an excellent job with the high kids. And she said, well, she doesn't actually do that. Said she's not a very good teacher. She said, the high kids are going to meet, as long as you get the door open, they're going to meet. The low kids have all these extra services, EC and Title I and all that stuff. They get all these support people helping them. Said you can't teach a lick. The proof in the pudding is you can't teach the middle kid. I mean, where she doesn't get any help. They're not great. They're not AG program or the TD program or whatever you want to call it. They're not in that. They don't get any support on the end. They're just, they're just everyday kid that showed up. She can't teach a lick. We got to help her. And now look at teacher B. She really is good with the low middle kid, but not the high kid. You know what I would bet? And your last case study in the second half of this semester is going to be about a teacher like that. You know what I would bet she's doing? She's using the high ones to teach the low ones every day. It's exactly what she's doing. I've got a case study on that where parents came and stormed the Bastille, charged the principal's office because all the gifted kids, all they had them do every day was teaching the other kids. Well, they're just doing, that's just remediation for them. They just get dumber every day. Now, the low kids do better, but that's that school's version of an inclusion model. Well, that's against every law you can think about and every ethical concern that you can think about to do that. But that's exactly what that teacher was doing. She was using she was using force multiplier. Yeah, she was doing great with them low kids, but it wasn't because she just had them tutored, calling it cooperative learning. Put a smart kid in every group and have them teach the rest. That's what we're talking about is looking for holes in the game. Those were two extreme examples that she brought us. And neither one of them work for her anymore. So there won't be a second round of data on them. I mean, your data doesn't lie, folks. But the whole notion of this is we're going to help you improve. This is holes in your game. Yeah, they always get up and cry. Jeff Hamilton and I used to go out and do this workshops all over. And, we'd go in and I'd do the math, I'd do the calculus, just like I showed you. And they'd be sitting there nodding their head, not believing a word of it. But, it was pretty, we were getting along pretty good until Jeff got up and started going over their data with them about, the holes in their game. And you're exactly right. If we hadn't been two pretty sizable fellows, we'd probably took several whippings around the state, especially in some place like Gaston, that bunch of rednecks. I didn't say that out loud, did I? But seriously, people get mad, want to fight. When you told them and you just, look, we're trying to help you here. But there's so many, so many misconceptions, so many wives' tales on that. And that's one of the things that you have to dispel. This is not here to punish you. It's here to determine what you're good and what you're not good at, which groups you can work at, things that, in your growth plan, in your MTSS for you that we can help you with, that we've got to grow, even though we understand the performance grade is punitive. It's slanted against lower end communities and communities of color, because it's 80%, performance, proficiency, and only 20% growth. But the notion here is we still got to grow kids. That's what we do. We got to teach and grow kids. And if we do that, we'll be okay. We'll eventually get where we need to be. But we got to dissuade them from this notion of is we just put these kids over here and let them play checkers. We're going to work with these 10 in the room because they're close to proficiency level. That happened for years, folks. For years, we did that. And that was just wrong. We malpracticed on kids for years doing that. I mean, we did everything in the world. I mean, Cleveland County, one year dumped all their kids out of all the high school courses that were going to be tested, like algebra and biology and all that. And within 2 years, they had the highest unemployment rate in the state, and their crime rate had doubled. Well, good for them. It was commonly known as the Cleveland County dump. That's what we're talking about here, folks. We've done everything in the world to cheat along the way. It's about time that we actually were intellectual and we got to the point where it's about kids growing and learning. And that's what we've got to do. We've got to lead for growth. I know it's difficult, but we've got to lead for growth. Well, that's personnel in a nutshell. I told you I'd get done in an hour. I appreciate you joining me tonight. I'll see you next week, and y'all are going to do your 15 minutes that you would do for your faculty. So, you got to get in that habit. And then when we meet on Saturday, when you do Maxwell, when we get face-to-face again, it's 15 minutes like you're working with your faculty up in front of them. You got to get practiced on how to get in and get out in 15, just like I've got to get in and get out in 60 when I say I will. I'll see you next week. Thank you.